I'm Jessica Stickler. I'm here to talk a little bit about how I choose songs for Shavasana. So, mainly, I use sort of three guidelines, and then I'll talk about each one. The first guideline is the length of time. So, my ideal Shavasana songs are 10 minutes long or as close to 10 minutes as I can get. Two, no English lyrics, with very few exceptions, but in general, no English lyrics. We'll talk about that in a moment. And three, no active sort of percussion, let's say, with very few exceptions, and I'll explain what the exceptions are later. So, first and foremost, well, this is coming from my training in the Jivamukti tradition and the Jivamukti method. And most of these guidelines are coming from Sheridan David directly. So, the first being that in a Jivamukti open class, we have a 10-minute Shavasana. Now, if you're teaching a different style of class or you're teaching a different length of class, that might be different. For example, if you're teaching an hour class, it might be that you have a 5-minute Shavasana, in which case the ideal length of time for that Shavasana might be 5 minutes. Now, the reason I say that is because, you know, often, especially in the Jivamukti method, if I'm walking around the room and maybe giving some Shavasana assists or uh, sort of that kind of thing, what happens if I have the perfect length of time is I can be moving around the room, or I can be giving somebody a little shoulder and neck massage and not have to worry about hopping up to go turn the music down or hopping up to go change the music, because the track is going to go all the way to its natural end, and then that can signal to me at that point to start cueing people out of Shavasana. Also, it keeps me really honest about my timing. So, you know, if I have a tendency for my sequences to run long, it's going to be real clear that I don't have the full 10 minutes Shavasana. So it kind of keeps me honest also in terms of giving the students their full rest. Um, Secondly, uh, with maybe one exception that I can think of at hand, I try not to use English lyrics. Now, that is coming directly from Sharon and David. Um, and the reason being that English lyrics um, engage our thinking brain, they engage the language centers and cognition centers. So remember that the purpose of Shavasana is to move beyond the thinking brain and to experience conscious relaxation, so to somehow experience um, transitioning from the sort of wakeful state into this sort of other state. So I find if there's English lyrics, my brain is like too much here and not enough just experiencing the sort of like pranic, like floating juiciness of Shavasana. There's, like I said, there was a couple exceptions. I can now think of two exceptions, which is that like sometimes Krishna Das or someone like that will be singing or chanting in Sanskrit or Hindi and then kind of move into the English lyrics, but it's still very elevated. It's like, you know, may love envelop me, or may all beings everywhere be happy and free. For example, there's one other song that a favorite musician of mine who used to play in my live music classes in New York City, she has a track that is very much kind of like, you know, it's like speaking from the earth's point of view, and the earth is like, lay your head down on me and let me envelop you with my love. And it's very much it almost contributes to the mood of sort of releasing into the earth, right? So those are the only two exceptions I can think of. But then, if you're teaching other places, like if you're teaching in Germany, then don't have sort of German lyrics or what have you, right? So like Sanskrit or nothing, maybe you could say, or like sometimes I'll put on um, some of those beautiful like Benedictine chants or something, which are again they're sort of elevated language, elevated intention, but it's also, likely in Latin or something that not a lot of us are actively speaking. So that's lyrics. And then the third one has to do with the sort of percussive element. So if there's like a beat and percussion, that's, inherently sort of more rajasic and more activating, right? So that's going to, again, potentially take us out of being in that like ethereal, relaxed space. So 99% of the time, ethereal, ambient, melodic, but not very, tempo or percussive, you could say. And again, there is a notable exception, a very notable exception. So there's this song, Marconi Union. The song is called Weightless. And they even did some like relaxation studies about it. And it's supposedly the most relaxing song ever composed, which I don't know. I mean, did they test all the songs? I don't know. But anyway, take that with a grain of salt. But it's very ethereal and relaxing. It does have a very slight beat in the background, and it's subtle. But the other thing about it is that the beat is, I believe, exactly 60 beats per minute, which is closer to like a resting heart rate. So in that case, you could make the case for this sort of low, subtle tempo actually kind of helping the body settle into a restful rhythm. So those are kind of my three guidelines. Now, of course, as we've discussed, there's exceptions to everything, but that's kind of what I use to guide myself. And I have a playlist called Best Shavasana Songs, which if you follow me on Spotify, you can go find, or even if you don't follow me on Spotify, you can go find that, follow that. I add to it when I find a new one that I like. There are a couple on there that are a bit longer than the 10 minutes, which does mean I have to, get up and turn it off when it's time, and I have to keep more of an eye on the time. But they're still really useful, so I keep them on there. One in particular is a piece by Michael Hewitt, which is closer to 15 minutes. And actually, the way that one is structured, I like to actually start it at the beginning of shoulder stand, and then it just flows right through as we come down out of shoulder stand into Shavasana. And right at that 5 minute mark, hello. Right at that 5 minute mark, the song transitions from a little bit more textural into a little bit smoother sort of sound vibes. So that's a great one. And I'll keep adding to it as I find more, as I stumble across more. But it's a pretty solid sort of canon of classic Shavasana songs I use a lot. So yeah, and if you have suggestions for other Shavasana songs that aren't on there, please feel free to drop them in the comments or shoot me a message.